That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about The Feast, the directorial debut of Lee Haven Jones, which premiered at the 2021 South by Southwest Film Festival and is being released courtesy of IFC Films November 19th, 2021.
You said directorial debut?
He's done a lot of television, including, I believe, a whole season of Doctor Who. And the screenwriter, Roger Williams, has also done a lot of television, but I believe this is their first feature narrative as well.
Okay. Unfortunately, I didn't care for this movie.
Same, but...
The basic story is, there's a family, they are in Wales. Mm-hmm. I had a hard time, because they're not speaking English, and I thought they were like in Norway, and then you explained they're speaking Welsh. But anyway, it's like mom, dad, and the two adult sons. The dad is a member of British Parliament. Mm-hmm. Okay, they have money. They are in their like sort of country home in Wales, but their main home is in London. The reason they're in Wales for what appears to be the weekend is the dad is in cahoots with like some like mining or fossil fuel industry type people, and he has people mining on his property or drilling for something. So he's trying to convince his neighbor to allow these people to lease her land to do drilling as well. And
on this property, they've discovered some strange caves.
So we find out that, yes, there are some caves, and there's also some folklore about some entity that, like some spirit that lives underground, so no one ever goes in those caves. But the opening of the film is like people drilling, and then we see like what looks like oil or mud spurting out of the ground, and then one of the workers looks injured, but also maybe like he's possessed or something. Okay, so the family, the four of them, they're hosting two people for dinner.
Technically three.
Technically three, but one doesn't show. So 7 people for dinner, and the lady of the house is not able to manage that meal on her own. Glenda. So she hires like a maid for the day. Her usual maid is not available, so it's this new lady named Cadi.
Cadi, I think is how they were pronouncing it.
Cadi. Mm-hmm. The minute she shows up at the door, it's obvious something's wrong with her. Like, she's generally affected.
Like, go away, just turn back.
But to wrap it up, we find out pretty early on from the neighbor who's at dinner, you know, who they're trying to convince to let her land be leased, that someone's car drove into the lake. Mm-hmm. So the person whose car that was Cadi's, or Cadi. Cadi. The maid, she died, and this evil spirit entered her body, and that's who showed up to this meal, and she kills everyone. The end.
There you go.
Well, she doesn't kill the neighbor, because the neighbor is acknowledging that we should respect the land, mm-hmm. and that she will not let anyone drill on her property. So she makes it out like she doesn't even know anything's happening. She just excuses herself from dinner. But the rest of those fools all get dealt with. Yeah. So this feels kind of like an eco-horror film.
This is folk horror meets eco-horror, but it has no tension. Fern Gully, as an eco-horror film, has more tension than this film, which I think is its main problem. And all of it is built upon stereotypes regarding privilege and familial dysfunction without any real characterization at all, including for that of Cadi, played by Ans Elwy, probably butchering these names, but it starts out promisingly, I think, because it's giving me vibes of Vinterberg's The Celebration, which is a favorite, or even based on the title, I'm thinking, oh, maybe this will be like Marco Ferreri's Le Grand Bouffe, which if you haven't seen that and you like disturbing cinema, Le Grand Bouffe is must-see.
Not Shia LaBeouf.
No. This falls apart, I think, rather quickly.
So stereotypes. So the man of the house, the member of parliament, he is like who's
Gwyn, played by Julian Lewis Jones, who when you first see him in the he's hunting rabbits. I was like, is that Josh Duhamel?
He is a handsome man. He does look like a mature. Well, Josh Duhamel's not young either, but he's a handsome man. But he's supposed to be sort of like rugged and masculine and sort of aggressive. Then the wife is very much like, I'm here to serve my man and I have to keep this household up.
And be extremely fussy.
And fussy, yeah. Then her two sons, one is like a druggie. Like that's the only narrative we get about him. Guto. And then the other son,
Gweirydd,
is a doctor, but he has stopped practicing to train for a triathlon, and then he's also like trying to start some sort. They call it a triathlon business. Like I don't know what that means, but he is a weirdo. Like we see him wearing like a rider's singlet, and we see him shaving his pubic hair and eating raw meat. So he's just generally weird. So I just feel like these characters have nothing to them except these basic characteristics.
With a lot of things that don't make sense, like maybe there were a lot of rewrites, because the drug addict, there's a scene where his father takes his cigarette lighter, but then he's got all these drugs in his room.
Yes, the father is rummaging through his room and the son knows that the dad looks through his stuff, so yes, he can't even find a cigarette lighter. But then later in the evening, he just has pills laid out all over his counter or his dresser. Then this fool consumes all of the pills. We don't know what these pills are. Tylenol, I mean, they might have been some multivitamins, water soluble. I don't know, because he eats them all and then nothing happens. So, don't know how that worked. Go ahead.
No, I don't know, just absolutely none of it worked for me. Even when you get, we were debating a lot about the neighbor, whether she's a lesbian or not. But she comes over and then, that really introduces this supernatural element that both her and Glenda knew about growing up on this property. Like, you don't mess with that part of the earth. You can't wake her up.
Go ahead.
Well, you already interrupted me, so.
I'm just going to go through my notes quickly.
Sure.
I feel like for people who are in like fetish, like singlets, I feel like you'll get something from that. And then if you're into feet, one of the guys, you see his feet quite a bit.
But cut up.
Yeah, but I mean, some people like seeing feet, so I mean, there's that. I'm just trying to be positive. I just really hated the characteristic of the maid, because the minute they opened the door, it's like there's clearly something wrong with her, and then we just saw someone else look like there's something wrong with them. There's no room to be lured into sort of this horrific evening.
Right, and then
I'm just waiting for something.
As the revelations come about, why is this presence taking the time to cook with the mother and prepare this meal when ostensibly she could have just taken all of these people in the first place? I don't understand kind of the cat and mouse game, the hunting game, and I think, as we had also discussed prior to filming this, there are a lot of interesting ways in a non-supernatural sense this also could have worked, and it still could have been an eco-horror film about this girl who kind of loses it making all these meat products at this elitist family's home, because that also is an undercurrent.
Yes, so like you said, I think it's really weird that what does this entity represent? Like Mother Nature? Because I don't think so, because then she's all freaked out about eating rabbits.
Which that dinner, rabbits with tropical fruit salad, sounds no good. If you've had rabbit, it's kind of gamey.
Additionally, if this is like if this entity wants to eradicate the thing that is destroying the earth, which again, the film's not saying that, it just feels that way, then it's like, well, why wouldn't it just destroy them? Why is it playing this cat and mouse game? But even if it is just sort of an evil entity, why is it being methodical about how it's killing these people? So that took me out.
The whole denouement of the two brothers I particularly didn't like, because then it's into this hallucinogenic scene in the woods where there's limb cutting. She at one point puts a glass shard up her vagina and the weird brother has sex with her. It just seems like this is all provocation and shock value, but none of it, there's no payoff.
You alluded to what I thought would have been a better story, which is, yes, what if you eliminate the supernatural component and just make this person, like maybe this member of parliament is known to be not very ecologically friendly, or has really bad policies towards whatever she's bothered by. So maybe she's like an environmentalist, an extremist, and she takes a gig working in these people's home, and then throughout the night finds a way to like destroy them.
Right, because
that could have been super interesting.
We're fed all kinds of random details too about the dad who had a bad childhood and he likes to come out here to hunt and
like who cares?
Yeah, well, exactly, and then has a health condition that's like a peptic ulcer or something
that he says was a heart attack, and then the son embarrasses him at dinner, which seems to serve no purpose.
And the dinner's weird because the lesbian, whether or not she is a lesbian,
she was a lesbian.
She won't eat the rabbit, but comments about how it's the best meal she's ever had.
Right, like this 3-course meal that she's only barely touched the first course. Like, this is the best meal I've ever.
And then we have to take that sequence where she goes and shows the neighbor this retreat she's built within the home.
Oh, yeah.
Which looks like foreboding for sure. And the Mair is the neighbor's lady's name, and she said, "This looks like a prison cell."
Speaking of so that scene, I thought for sure, based on the title and the scene you're talking about, where Glenda takes the neighbor to like this, it looks like a jail cell, but she says it's her like sanctuary retreat. I thought for sure maybe they were taking people and eating them. But no, she just really wanted to show her this empty cement room. But getting back to the house, quite a bit of effort is made in the screenplay to talk about how great this house is, how long it took us to build it, and like just how awesome it is. But that kitchen dining room is so unimpressive. It literally is just anyone's old regular ass.
Especially in the daytime sequences when they're getting ready.
So the kitchen, and then they have this little circular dining room table next to the main kitchen island that they go to great pains to set. And it just looks like anyone's kitchen. Like it's not even a formal dining room. I just thought it really was a letdown because this doesn't feel I don't know the word, like official,
grand,
like the feast, and the feast is just at like grandma's circular table next to the kitchen island.
And I get it. It's not a grand party per se. They have insidious intentions for their neighbor that they're trying to convince. So that part makes sense. But I did have to laugh though because the neighbor lady storms off, and Glenda shouts at her like, "You're not staying for dessert. Do you know how hard pavlova is to make?" Which is true. Oh. You should stay for the pavlova.
The main girl, the maid, what's her name?
Cadi.
That's right. Her hair stayed greasy for like the first 30 minutes, which I thought was so weird. And then all of a sudden she combs it and it's like all frizzy and puffy. Like it wasn't that puffy, but like something weird was happening with her hair that bothered me. Then the other guest, the guy who wants to drill, oh my God, that acting, and then him eating, he does this thing where he puts like
he puts all his fingers in his mouth when he eats.
I don't understand what that was about.
And at one point he has to dig something out.
Then there's a scene where the doctor, because he's not going to eat the dinner that's prepared, he's on a special diet to train for this triathlon, which is just raw meat, which doesn't really make sense to me. I would think that someone training for a triathlon would need a very well-balanced meal with carbohydrates and good proteins. I don't know why him just eating raw meat that's like cured with some stuff, but whatever, he chokes on some of it, and then no one can help him until the maid like reaches down to his throat and then pulls out a big piece of like hair. But then we also see that hair in Euros, like he pulls out hair. So then I'm wondering if maybe the evil entity is like the spirit of like a rabbit, and that's why it was so upset when it saw. But then it's like, maybe save this movie for Easter time. I don't know. Then the only scene that kind of got me going, and as far as like body, I guess, or horror, I guess it's more body horror, but we see the druggy brother's leg start to rot with maggots, and then the maid like licks the maggots off.
Yeah, there are some gross out scenes. It's just I don't know that there's, as I said, any kind of payoff. I think we needed a stronger. I think we needed to be led more into whatever folklore that we're playing off of here, because I'm unfamiliar with it and it wasn't interesting enough for me to want to pay close attention or watch again.
Oh no.
Which I think is, if it's the real point of making cinema, is you would want someone to watch your film a second time.
What would you give this?
1 out of 5.
Oh, I would give it 1.5, but I wouldn't recommend it. Anything else?
No.
Bye.